Okay, sorry about that. I did not realize that my microphone was muted. So let me start over and say, everybody, welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show on intellectualradio.com with Mark Wallace, your host and facilitator, with you every Monday night from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock. Now, I know I am of no delusion, right? That those of you who are joining me are going to be tuning out as soon as President Biden takes the stage, which I certainly understand that that's what you would be doing. I wish there was some way that I could broadcast it um, through the stream. I haven't learned how to do that, and I don't know if that is capable of doing that. But you know, I'm sure that as we learn the technology and as the technology improves, that we may be able to do that sort of thing. But I'm not going to even try to tinker around with it tonight. But there's some great things coming up this week. I've been really busy with some pre-things happening with the DNC. I was out with the media reception that was done by the city of Chicago and the mayor of the city of Chicago at Navy Pier on Saturday night. Thanks to some friends of mine in the media that made it possible for us to be there. We got the information, and then I passed it on to um, Earl. He wasn't able to be there because of the late notice, but Earl provides this platform for us to have our voices heard and to put information out. And so we certainly thank him for that. And anything that comes up, at least I try to make sure that I pass that information on to him to be a part of that. But he wasn't able to do it. So sorry about that. But that was a good event. And then, of course, on um, that was Saturday night. And then earlier that day, I had to be out in Flossmoor with the community of Flossmoor as they continue to do their demonstration. And they are protesting the building of a detention basin that is this massive 18 to 20-foot detention basin that they're building that is adjacent to the Heather Hill Elementary School, where predominantly Black children attend that school out in Flossmoor. Now, Flossmoor is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes south of the city of Chicago. It's a very nice community, upper middle class community, which just turned 100 years old. They had their centennial year this year, but um, the people in that community, some people in that community, in the white part of the community, don't want to see the kinds of change happening. We see that happening all across the country. Is that as the country browns, as the country becomes more increasingly less white, there are people who are showing their disdain to that and doing everything that they can, digging their heels in to try to um, hold on to power and not share that power and to dictate things the way that they want to dictate them. Um, but in that community that is 63, 64% black, out in that community, they have a 100% white administration, a white mayor, a white village manager, a white assistant village manager, and most of the staff within the administration is white. They have 3 black trustees and 3 white trustees, but the 3 white trustees always vote with, if there's a tie, vote with the mayor, which simply just means that they are running it as an authoritarian and not as a democracy. And so the people out in Flossmoor, the black community out in Flossmoor, over the last couple of years are waking up to a realization that they are not living in a utopia land out in Flossmoor. And so they hired their first black chief of police. And the first black chief of police who was more than qualified to be the chief of police in that community. But there are some who believe that he was hired in the wake of the killing of Madeline Miller in 2022 by a police officer in Flossmoor, that hire was somewhat of a farce of a hire. It was really to try and, tone down what had happened with Madeline Miller. And when they realized that they had a police chief who was not going to just be their yes person, who was not going to go along with everything that they dictated that they wanted to do, they became rather disenchanted with him and found an excuse to terminate him. Within less than a year, the first black chief of police in Flossmoor in their 100-year existence, they trumped up these bogus excuses or so-called reasons, which were not warranted, to terminate Chief Jarrell Jones. We were called, and certainly I received a phone call from Craig Wembley, who he had received a call from somebody saying that there was something going on out there and they need some help with what's happening. So we got involved. And as the more we got involved, the more we started to find out, and the more that the citizens of Flossmoor discovered that Flossmoor is not as progressive and not as inclusive as they had thought or hoped it to be. And so they started to paying attention to how things are being done there, and they are voicing their concerns about certain things, but their voices are not being heard. They're going through the motion of speaking at the public meetings, speaking at the board meetings about issues, whether it's the detention basin or the firing of Chief Jarrell Jones, or the investigation to the shooting of Madeline Miller, or the harassment that the first black principal of the school there, I forget the name of the school there, but the first black principal there was harassed and denigrated with racial epithets and racial charges and attacks that they forced her out because there was no real support there from the administration. So all these things that they are really starting to pay attention to, that has been there for the longest, as long as nobody raised a question to the white entitled administration of Flossmoor. Now, the mayor there has only been there for a couple of years. Her name is Michelle Nelson, and Bridget Wachtel, who is the village manager, who's been there for 20 years. Now, Bridget Wachtel is the person who basically runs the village, and everybody reports to her, and the mayor goes along with what she basically decides because she's been there for 20 years, and the mayor's never really held a job, really. She's a civil engineer, I believe, or something like that, but she's never really held a position. Certainly, she has not been in charge of running anything, certainly not been in charge of any type of government. So getting involved with the Flossmoor community and what is going on out there in the Flossmoor community, we found that these kinds of disparities are in place in Flossmoor. And as a result of that, more and more of this type of conduct or practice was being revealed and understood by the residents of Flossmoor. So there is this move, there is this effort. They have an election coming up in 2025, April 1st of 2025, and the Black community in Flossmoor has decided that they are going to run candidates. And there's a candidate by the name of Joni Bradley Scott, who is a current sitting trustee, who has decided that she is going to be a candidate for to become the mayor of the village of Flossmoor. The village of Flossmoor needs to be more inclusive. The government, as it is now, needs to be changed. It is an authoritarian type run government where people in the community have voiced their opposition to things like the detention basin built right next to a school, taking park land to build a detention basins, when the whole process is questionable, how this all came to being, when the community was not more apprised or educated or involved in the decision making. So now it is a real issue. And you're building this detention basin, which is going to be about 18 to 20 feet deep. And I don't know how long this is, but it is a massive, massive detention basin project that is adjacent to the school. Just last week, the parents over all this time have been objecting to it once they found out what was going on. Just last week, on August the 12th, a child got into the detention basin, the construction site. Thank God it was not hurt. There was no injury, but it was easy for them to get into the detention basin. Now, look, I know that as little boys, are curious and they want to know, and they're going to want to go and get into things. I did it. I was a little boy. I understand. However, the parents in the community feel that the people on the board of the school board and the people on the board of the village did this without including the voice of the community. And there seems to be serious opposition to this, and not sure that, well, people are pretty sure in that community that this was not the best choice, that there were other choices. Now, some would argue that the other choices were not feasible, and some would argue that it was more expensive. But I think that when you have those kinds of situations, you bring that to the members, or you bring that to the citizens, and you say to the citizens, look, these are what our options are. This is option A, option B, option C. Option A would cost us this much. Option B would cost us this much. Option C would cost us this much. You need to be able to weigh and discuss and deliberate all of the pros and the cons. That is what democracy is. Not the way that they did it, and not the way that they're doing things. So we have this effort of authoritarianism going on and being forged all around the country, whether it's in a small town or a small village or a big city or a state or even a country for that matter, that this pervasiveness in ideology, that we are going to completely abdicate and abandon democracy. And what is democracy? Democracy is when the people elect, they vote and elect representatives from their areas to become their voters on policy, not to become their dictators. Democracy is that the people elect an electing body that votes on legislation, on ordinances, on policy, on laws that the people want up or down. And the representatives are to communicate with the people who hired them, who voted for them to be their representatives. That's why it's called a representative. That's what democracy is. And so our representative governments represent the interest and the will of the people that hired them to represent them. That is what democracy is. What others are trying to do is to take democracy away so that you don't have the opportunity to elect your representatives, that your representatives can go and represent and vote on issues, on policies that represent the interest of their constituents. That is democracy. That is at risk. That is what is at stake. That's why we tell you week in and week out, this is not a personality contest. This is about the very fundamental saving of our construct of hundreds of years and blood, sweat, tears, and lives have been committed and sacrificed for us to be where we are today, to have made the kinds of gains and progress that we have made and that we have established. Not that we are anywhere close to being perfect, but we are better than we were before. And we're going in the right direction. We are in the most transformational government of policy of an administration since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. What this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has been able to get done with some bipartisan bill, with the Inflation Reduction Act that was not supported by a single Republican, that is reduce the cost of insulin to $35, prescription cost to be capped off at $2,000 a year. Just last week, it was announced that those seniors that are Medicare recipients now will be able to save close to $1.8 billion on 10 of the most expensive and needed medical prescriptions, and thereby will end up saving the taxpayers $6 billion a year. More and more people, some 15 million jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 46,000 projects underway as a result of the CHIPS and Science Act and the infrastructure bill. And on top of that, a president who wanted to be a two-term president and believed in all of his heart that he could do it, and so did I. With all of the successes, he looked at the global picture and said, I have to put my personal will aside, my personal desires aside, and I have to do what is in the best interest of the country. That's what real leadership is. That's what real commitment is. So he continues to demonstrate that kind of transformational leadership. Now, we can get into personality, politics. We can get into all of that. We can get into all the personality politics you want to. But it's counterproductive. Because you're on one side and somebody else is on the other side, or I am on one side. The fact that we are just going to hurl insults or disinformation without the basis of any factual information to support it, data to support it, also is counterproductive. And it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes about the commitment to making things better in our areas where we live, in our communities, in our country, in our cities. When you are so tied, to your ideology, that you would put your ideology before you would look to the country or your city or your community. What I am seeing, and is refreshing to see, because I've said all along that I would like the day to return where Democrats and Republicans can sit at a table and discuss and debate the issues and come up with compromises to solve problems. And to not distort the truth and calling something true that is not true, or calling something that is true not true, or hanging on to somebody who is clearly a threat to the progress of the democratic process and the democratic bill, small d, not big, that the work that we have done as a nation, as communities, where we have gotten to this point, to allow for someone like Donald Trump. It is astonishing to me that there are so many people willing to completely abdicate any type of character or moral standards to support this individual. It's still astonishing to me, knowing all that we know about that person, that people are just dug in. But I'm looking forward to the day that this wound on America, that we won't have to contend with them. Now, they're not going to go away, but what we can do for the protection of our process is to make sure that he does not have the position to destroy that process. That's what I'm looking forward to. So I have a call in to former Governor Jim Edgar. I have a call in to Adam Kinzinger to try to get both of them to come on the program, because I look forward to the day that I can sit and have a conversation and debate and come up with solutions and compromises that are going to be beneficial to the whole, with people who think differently than I do. That's democracy. Democracy is not one side making all of the rules and dictating all the rules and taking the voice of anybody else's away. When you say that we want to get rid of 50,000 civil servant career employees, that's not democracy. That's creating authoritarianism at its worst. And you want to put in 50,000 people who are political appointees who may not have the expertise as the bureaucrats who have spent their career serving the country. We have to make sure, and we have to make sure in a wide margin, that there is no question on November the 5th that that is not the direction that we want the country to go back to. We're going to talk about that more. I'm going to be bringing on a guest of mine who is in the studio, in the green room. We're going to bring him on. As I spoke to you earlier, his name is Kevin Dorsey. He is now a candidate for trustee in Flossmoor community. I've come to know this gentleman, working with he and other members of the Flossmoor community about the very thing that I'm talking about, is making their village, their communities more inclusive and more reflective of what that community looks like, so the voices of everybody in the community are heard and respected. That's there, and that is what we have to do all around the country, and that's what we have to protect on a national basis. All right, I'm going to bring him into on with us. Brother Kevin Dorsey, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Wallace, I'm honored, and thanks for having me.
I certainly appreciate you coming on. Wanted to get your take. Today is the first day of the DNC. I know that I'm very excited about what's happening here. Hold on one second here. I'm having some audio issues. Hang on one second. Okay, there we go. All right. Wanted to get your thoughts and how you were feeling about what's happening, and that's the shift over the last 4 weeks.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I was, I can never completely check out of politics. But literally this had me, I was disappointed. I was disappointed where the way things were going. And had even lost, which is difficult for me because I always try and maintain some hope, but had even lost a little hope. I'm a fan of President Biden. I'll tell you, I've told people he could have been hooked up to oxygen in a hospital, and I still would have given him my vote. And I say that because my interpretation of Joe Biden is truly what leadership is. You can't believe that you have all the answers. So you surround yourself with people that will give you honest counsel. And I think that's what the presidency of Joe Biden has done. He surrounded himself with some very intelligent individuals to give him counsel. The opposite, Mr. Trump, regardless of who he surrounds himself with, he's his own counsel. He's going to make his own move from what it is he sees fit. But I had lost a little bit of hope, because let's be honest. I mean, President Biden wasn't, operating on all cylinders, and I thought that was going to actually have a negative show for many people in this political campaign. But with the change, with Vice President Harris. It gave me, it rejuvenized me for not only what this election could mean, but the hope that I have for this country, for what this country means. So I'm pretty excited. I've seen what is done, not only for me at my age, but I've even seen the young folk get excited about this. Right, they're back into it. You can't deny the amount of money that's been raised, but when you go to the rallies, you just can't deny the excitement. And I'm pretty confident that that level of excitement is going to turn out with people putting their ballots in the box and showing up at the polls to vote. So I'm pretty strongly optimistic about the outcomes of not only this election but the future of this country.
Yeah, here's and I had similar feelings and thoughts, because this presidency, this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has been a transformational administration. They have passed policies, one bipartisan and three transformational policies that are bringing people back to the middle class, growing the middle class, where at one time, since we haven't grown this fast, of bringing people out of poverty and bringing more people into the middle class since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, where at one time we were 63% of the country was in the middle class. Now we're at 43%, but that number is growing. When Ronald Reagan came into office and put an axe to it in the 1980s, and we've been paying the price for that for over the past 40 years. And along came Joe Biden, who was not somebody that I was very high on initially, right? But I am one of those persons that I don't dig my heels in because I thought one way about someone when somebody has definitely have proved themselves to be different, to be different and transformational. And so Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris administration has unequivocally, transformationally passed policies that are going to improve the lives of millions and millions of people and advance the country if we keep going in the direction that we're going with the policies that they've been able to pass. I mean, $16.5 billion going to HBCUs, not just minority institutions, but HBCUs in the past 3.5 years. Quadruple the number of SBA loan grants to Black businesses.
Right.
Unbundled contracts for the federal government that allowed Black businesses to get $70 billion in federal contracts. These are things that are unheard of, and I could just go on and on and on and on with the accomplishments that this administration has been able to get done. So I was upset that here we have a man on the other side who has a horrendous record, 34 felonies and countless others that he's going to be held accountable for and could be in jail. I mean, a convicted felon. And yet you have people on that side of the aisle wrapping their arms around this person like they are a holy deity. And then on the flip side, we have a president who's been pretty stellar in his service as president over the past 4 years. And we had all these people from eating our own. So it was pretty upsetting to me to say, well, wait a minute, I don't need a president. I'm not looking for a president to run laps around a football field. I want a president who is going to be able to operate in government, represent the interests of the broader citizenry, that is going to make opportunity more accessible to more people, that lives can be improved. That's what I want a president to do. And I saw where it was confusing me that what are the Democrats doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Um, you know, they wrap their arms around a criminal, and we want to throw our guy into the sea of forgetfulness and forget about all of what they have led us out of and through.
Mm-hmm.
I was upset. I really was very, very upset about it. Now, when Joe Biden made his decision at 1:45 on that Sunday afternoon, um, of what he was going to do, he demonstrated to me again real leadership.
Absolutely.
Real
Absolutely.
leadership who said, all right, I want to do this. I know that I can do it, and I believe that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not going to risk the progress of the country because of my personal feelings when there are so many other people who are raising these kinds of concerns and are not being supportive.
What a demonstration of selfless leadership.
Absolutely. And masterful.
Absolutely.
Masterful. All right. Masterful at the timing of it. And then he comes back 30 minutes later and says, I am endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to become the nominee. And then to see how the country or the Democratic Party wrap their arms and organize themselves around that decision, and to see it move in the direction, it gave me a resurgence of hope, right?
Absolutely.
I didn't like what had happened, but it did give me a resurgence of hope, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that stands before us. Now, we have a lot of work to do. I'm not, I'm not lost on that at all. And because, I can remember back when Hillary Clinton was at this very same time, was leading in the polls.
Absolutely.
And of course, they found some way to dig up something to,
that old electoral college that we need that is old and ancient, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So, however, we just have to make sure that this is not even close. So that those who want to take the democratic process and distort it and discredit it for their own will to try and take us back into a place that we don't need to go back into, and certainly don't desire to go back into. So I believe we have to do all that we can to make sure that this is not even a close race at the end of the day.
Absolutely. But, regardless of what the numbers show, right? The tone has already been set by the other candidate that anything short of a victory in his favor is already a rigged election.
Right.
I spent almost 30 years supporting and defending this country and our military. And when I hear individuals talk about, we have to have a coup, we have to have a revolution, and, what we should do, and already setting the tone for that, that's not the country that I fought for almost 30 years. And when I hear anyone, it's one thing to hear the radicals, the Proud Boys, and those individuals. But when we're talking about individuals that have been elected to office, that have a certain amount of education and aptitude, for them to take that road is almost as if that is treason. For you to even call for that in this country, for me, that's treason. I know we have our freedom of speech, but when you're calling for that type of unrest and you hold that level of position, an individual that said it never served in the military. I mean, it's always amazing those who are saying, let's go up in arms, but never defend it in that way, right? So I'm prayerful and hopeful that as a nation, we realize that a lot of the ridiculousness that happened after the last election, and a lot of the ridiculousness that's spoken from this ridiculous man, I hope that people realize that that's not the way we want our country to be seen. This last year, I've traveled abroad 3 different times in this last year. And the questions I'm asked every time people find out I'm an American is, what are you guys doing? And it's never about who a sound-minded thinking individuals are. It's like, how does anyone have, and some people say, how you have a convict running for president? How do you guys have that level of unrest? People don't look for that for us in our country. My nephew is a Navy chief petty officer. And when I was with him, I asked others, I remember when we used to pull into these ports, people would look at us as, hey, that's the United States military that's coming. And they'd have a certain amount of respect and pride. He said to me, he goes, Unc, we don't get that anymore. We don't get that anymore. And I'm hoping that's where we get back to. And that has happened all with the ridiculousness that happened after having 4 years of Trump.
All about one person. Let me just do this because some people, you alluded to certain things. So let me just kind of read a little bit of your background. Kevin holds a doctorate in organizational leadership with a concentration in diversity, equity, and inclusion from the University of Illinois. Champaign-Urbana, a master's of business administration from the, is that Geis?
Geese.
Geese College of Business, University of Illinois. I'm sorry, Geese. Yeah, College of Business, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, a Master's of Management and Organizational Development from the National University of California, San Diego, California, Bachelor of Arts from Columbia College, Chicago, Illinois, and Instructions Certification in Total Quality Management from Naval Amphibious School in San Diego. He also, Kevin is a retired United States Navy Command Master Chief with 28 years of highly decorated military service during a military career. He was an instrumental part of building fleet hospitals for the treatment care of military personnel serving in combat zones. He orchestrated multiple healthcare humanitarian missions with a full medical battalion, treating thousands of individuals in third world countries, and was highly decorated and awarded for numerous search and rescue objectives during the peaceful and hostile missions. That's who he is. So when people hear that you serve, they should know that you serve in the military. My father served in the Navy, and so I did not serve in the military. And my father served in the Navy. My uncle served in the Navy, and his other brother served in the Army. My brother went into the Navy, but was.
Well, Mark, our family serve alongside of us, so don't lose sight of that. Our family served right alongside of us.
Right. So, so we certainly appreciate all of that. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we came to know each other. You live in the village of Flossmoor, which is what I call upper middle class community, and you had a police chief that was hired. The first black police chief that was hired in the 100-year existence of Flossmoor, and I'm characterizing this way that I believe in that chief of police in his first year, the administration decided that they want to discharge him, which raised a lot of questions from people as to why. Why do you want to discharge this person? What has happened that you are discharging this person from his job, and um, and they did not provide any information, as many people in the community asked for and patiently waited for them to provide hard evidence that that decision was a just and right decision, only to get to the point to where that question still is up in the air, that that decision was not a right and just decision, but
Mhm.
it was a decision that was made, and it was a decision that was made that did not hear the voice of many in the community. And I think that it brought a broader awareness to people in the community that we got to think about how our government is set up here.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And just to piggyback on everyone waiting for an answer, it's not like we're waiting without one requesting an answer for the termination of former police chief, but it was actually even promised. It was our mayor and one of our village board meetings that actually said that we're going to get you this information, and when you get the information, you're going to rally your support behind the decision. So it's not that we were just waiting for it; it was promised,
Mhm.
and it still hasn't been delivered. And now, of course, it's we're in the middle of a litigation, so we can't share. I'm like, well, you knew you were litigating when you promised it, right? So, that, and I think for many of us, right? I mean, no one, Flossmoor is, pretty high in property taxes, right? And no one wants anyone on the payroll, whether it's a police chief, or whether it's a mayor, whether it's a village manager that isn't capable of doing their job. No one wants that.
Mhm.
But I think in any scenario, when you make that type of change, and you make that change abruptly, uh, we can't think when we're in a leadership role that we're above providing information and answers. And what was demonstrated to me was that, and to many others, that um, either there was a feeling as if the answer we weren't worthy of receiving an answer, or that the answer just wasn't going to be good enough anyhow, which I actually do believe. I believe that there's nothing that they have um, that could have made me and many other residents that are feeling the same way feel as if that, yeah, this was a justifiable move. And I've said personally to the mayor, I'll be the first one to apologize and I'll be the first one to go on every show. And I've done many news interviews and say, hey, we were wrong. Allow me to say that I was wrong. Um, we're not in that position. We're not in that seat. So much so that literally I couldn't support the leadership anymore. So last month or month and a half ago, I resigned from my position as community relations commissioner. And with that note, I actually said I just cannot support the leadership of the village at this point.
Yeah, you and I had a conversation when we first met. Your words to me was, "Listen, I want to be on the side of right. I always want to
Mm-hmm.
be on the side of right, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to. I want the information. I want answers, but I am going to. I always want to err on the side of right, and I want to hear what the administration says. And certainly, I respected you saying that and taking that position, as we all should take that position, and gave the administration the opportunity to provide information to the constituents of the village, that their decision that they made was one that was necessary for the whole of the village, And to this date, nobody has been satisfied with what they have provided.
Absolutely. I mean,
Now,
and even amongst the board itself, um,
mhm.
there's a division there, um, a division there of how this was presented. Not only how it was presented with the termination of the former police chief, but how decisions are being made moving forward. Right, that division is there, and again, we continue to have that same um, one-way communication where the voice of the people and Flossmoor has changed. I mean, I've been here 20 years and over 20 years, in fact, almost 25. And I remember, 20, 25 years ago, um, me and my children were amongst a few, that looked like this. Slowly, um, you know, situations has changed. In fact, is our government now is not representative of the population, and this the way things have been communicated actually demonstrates to me that there's a lack of consideration for who your residents, who your citizens are. It's like we've always been in leadership, we've always been in power, and regardless of what the racial divide or the racial makeup is now, we still think we have the power. And as I've said even in a couple of interviews, the people of Flossmoor really need to get engaged. What happens when you're in this? It's a very beautiful city. It's a very I'm a single dad. I can't think of a better place to have raised my two now adult children. But people have gotten comfortable, right? When you get here, it's almost like, hey, we've made it. Nice home, beautiful trees, great parks, great schools. So I think we put our guard down a little bit. Honestly, I think we put our guard down. That's how Trump got in office. Right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
no one's going to elect this guy, right?
right.
So we get comfortable and we put our guard down. So what I've said to everyone I see now, there's still so many people that I know that are intelligent, that's educated, that don't know of what has happened in their village. The conversations I have, and I'm educating and telling them, and I've had people even say, "Oh, I haven't voted in a local election since I've been here." And as our taxes continue to go up, right? As we continue to have things that are happening with, like in the Heather Hill School District, and the same thing, people just their voices aren't being heard. I think this is the time where not only do we need to wake up for America, and as you said, we can't have that vote close, but Flossmoor Village is part of America too. And if we think that we are protected from the things that are happening in the rest of our nation, this should waken us up to say that we're not. That we too are subject to those same deaf ears of our voice being heard. And the only power we really have to make this change is to get out and vote. I forget what the numbers were. We represent 85% of the population and only 16% of the vote. That's not going to make change. So
That's not going to make change. That's not going to make change. And I believe that it is incumbent upon all of us who understand the importance of that, is to help those others who have gotten comfortable. I get it. I get it. You come to Flossmoor. You don't come to Flossmoor because you cannot afford to live. You come to Flossmoor because you have accomplished a certain place in your social economic conditions, and sometimes we tend to equate our social economic achievement that somehow that raises us above discrimination,
Right.
or some people who are anti us. And the truth is the very opposite.
Mhm.
There are some people who don't care about, no matter how much you have achieved.
Right.
Their sociology is that I am of a certain group, which makes me superior,
Mhm.
regardless.
Mhm.
And that there's a certain attitude of that type of entitlement
Yeah.
that is so entrenched that they don't even realize it
Absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely.
Michelle Rothschild and I'm sorry, Michelle Nelson and Bridget Rothschild. Now, maybe, I'm going to give Michelle a little bit of the ignorance card,
Mhm.
but Bridget Rothschild, I believe in her mind, in the way that I have watched and observed her, is that she believes that it is the way that we want it to be,
Yeah.
and that you black folks, you
Yeah.
are here. We don't mind you being here, but you sit down and you be quiet and you don't question our decisions.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
believe that that's the way she thinks.
Yeah. And longevity without challenge, it it just builds more of that in an individual. And literally, that's who she's been. I mean, no performance review in over 20 years. I mean, in that position and, voting herself for whatever the raise is going to be. I mean, literally,
Yes.
Michelle may be the mayor, but Bridget runs the village. And that's that level of, of power and privilege that actually blinds people from from an opposing side because their view is what's right. Right? It
Exactly.
is whatever. And I will say this for Michelle, and I've even said this, openly in a village board meeting. It's one thing to lead when everything is going smooth. It's easy to lead, right? But when the stuff hits the fan, that shows what character you have as a leader. And when your character says, I'm going to go along with the most powerful person in the room, even though I'm the decision maker of power, it says a lot about the lack of character, the lack of strength. I actually think Michelle is a nice person. And we had a personal relationship many years until I started challenging this. Um, I think that you can't you can't be a peacetime a peacetime president is different from a wartime president. A peacetime mayor is different than a wartime mayor. The leadership that was needed for these scenarios was lacking in our current mayor. It was allowed to have the stronger individual, the stronger voice, um, run with whatever decision that she wanted, and everyone else just okayed, right? Um, and I think it's again when that happens, it's dangerous. Can you imagine having a 20-year president, right?
Very, very dangerous. It's
Sometimes,
very, very
yeah.
dangerous.
And
It's
I
very
think, as I
dangerous.
said, it's just time for change now. It's
Yeah.
time for change. And
Right.
I've made it very clear that where I sit, as you said, I'm always going to challenge myself to be on the side of right. I don't care who the mayor is. I don't care who the village manager is. My decision is going to be a decision that I've wrestled with, that I speak to literally at least 50 to 100 people in this little community every day. I'm out walking my dog or in the store. And it's going to be with the message of hearing what those individuals have to say. And you may not always like my decision, but I guarantee I can give you a rational thought process of how I came to that. And it's never going to be, well, it's because the other trustees voted that way and I just went ahead.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying yesterday, Saturday, I was there at Heather Hill Elementary at um, the the community meeting that they had there. Michelle was there, and there were probably 20 parents and members of the community was there, and I thought it was, uh, an act of courage for Michelle to be there. But I also thought that it showed her lack of leadership. That if you're going to show up at a meeting, at the very least, you should have something to say to the constituents about after you have heard all of their concerns.
Yeah.
And I think that that is the overwhelming issue here, is that people don't believe that they're being heard.
Absolutely.
Because not just hearing sound or showing up, because that's the thing to do, but that you're really considering what the concerns are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to tell you, when I physically walked that area and I saw what they were constructing there, I was astonished. I was amazed that they thought that that was a right thing to do in that place.
Mm-hmm.
That is where children attend
Mm-hmm.
and play. That there was no other alternative, and I raised the question. Because I believe in process. I believe in process, and that when you are making decisions that are going to impact the lives of other people, that the other people need to be in the discussion. And if you're if you want to make decisions, or there's options, those people need to be on the front end of that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to hear from the public. And it sounds to me that because of the way that the administration is set up, and because of how they have operated for 20 years, that they just went through the standard protocol to meet the minimum requirements.
Absolutely. What's dangerous is the administration seems to be a one that says, we know what's best for you.
Yes.
Right? We can have a bunch of old white men say what a woman's right to do with her body is because we know what's best for you. We can have old white men say, oh, we can't have you teaching this in school because we know what's best for you. Same scenario here. We make decisions in this village with not having to hear the voice of the citizens, because those that are empowered to make the decisions have that same belief. We know what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you put that in a decision that's going to affect a huge population, it's dangerous.
And and affect the population for years to come.
Yes.
Right? For years to come, way beyond you. So that tells me that you have people who are in place that go through the protocol, but that's simply merely just going through the formalities.
Right.
Going through the formalities, because you make this decision. And I said to, I believe her name was Ashley Giddings. I said, this still circles back to me as to how much notification did the residents of Flossmoor get before they were going to make this decision.
Mm-hmm.
There should have been a letter that went to every household,
right.
Saying that we are considering this, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have town hall meetings to discuss this and to
Mm-hmm.
discuss options and to hear your thoughts about this, pro or in opposition. That's democracy.
Right.
That's democracy, because democracy means that the people elect a mayor to be their representative,
Mm-hmm.
not their authoritarian.
Absolutely.
right? You represent the will of your constituents. That's not what's happening in Flossmoor. That's long, long, long gone, long
Absolutely.
gone. And either they get it and don't care, or they don't get it. Either way, it's wrong.
Hmm.
Either way,
Hmm.
it's wrong. And so, thusly, is why it is important that this change be made, because they're not going to change. They have already demonstrated to us that their heels are dug in, and we're going through this way. Michelle Nelson has that silly grin on her face when somebody is expressing their concerns, which tells me that you're just minimizing what somebody else's concerns are. That because they don't agree with what you think, that they're not uh, they're immaterial. They don't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't have that kind of person in that position.
Yeah.
And the
I
only
think some of that on her behalf too is a huge discomfort. And again, you can smile and shake hands, and when everyone's happy, it's easy to leave.
yes,
But I think some of that is a discomfort on her behalf of, I don't know how to lead in this scenario. I don't know. And especially being out there on her own. What is she going to say? She doesn't have Bridget there, right? No one's going to listen to Bridget. But I think some of that is just really it's a demonstration um, of lack of leadership when things are difficult, when it's dealing with people and their lack of satisfaction in the job that you're doing. Um, and we can't have that. We all hope to not have difficulty when we lead, but if you're doing anything for any period of time, there's going to be some difficulties that arise.
there's going to be difficulties, right? There's going to be difficulties, but I think that what the opportune with the village of Flossmoor is that there's great opportunity for government to connect with the community, because you have a small body of people. It's not like a big, huge city of Chicago, but you have a small body of people, but the concerns are still the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an opportunity to really make government work.
Yeah,
because you have access to the community, and the community has access to you.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as there is a willingness, on the part of the government to say, okay, we're in the position, but we have to understand our position. We're servants.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a position of service.
Absolutely.
And we want to make sure that the decisions that we make are the decisions that are representative of what is going to benefit the community for the long haul. Now, if there's a decision that has to be made, like let's take the detention basin. I understand that there were, I think, 3 different options or something like that, and there was cost concerns about the 3 different options. And I said, okay, that's legitimate, but there should be a conversation.
Absolutely.
There should be an education of the public on saying, these are the options that we have, and this is why, this is what it would cost each one of these options. If we were to do option A, it would cost X, and we would have to impose a special assessment of X. This is option B, and it would cost this, and we would have to impose a special assessment in order for us to be able to make sure that we pay for this. This is option C, and it would cost this. It doesn't cost as much as option A and B, but these are the challenges. So that way, now the community can say, well, you know what? What is the best, the overall best safety, long, for the long haul? Okay, let's say it's option A, and option A costs more money. So you give the community the opportunity to say, you know what? This is Okay, so we're weighing this. Let us vote on it
Hmm.
and let the community decide
And
on
we can do
whether
that.
we want to pay a little bit more.
Right. And it's really easy to do in a community of our size, right?
Yes.
It's this isn't as you say, this isn't, Chicago, right? This is Flossmoor, and it's a very simple process of getting the buy-in, or at least communicating to, and even if it was just narrowed down to those in the Heather Hill School District, those in that
Mhm.
community, go to them first, right? Get their view first. And then if it's a cost to it that affects the rest of the taxpayers, then it can actually be shared at that level, right? It's so many ways that being effective in our communication style and sharing information that just works best in these scenarios, other than someone saying, we're going to make this decision and everyone's going to like it. And if they don't like it, so what? But what that has done now is that's put us in another lawsuit, right?
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Another, and even defending it is probably more expensive than what those other alternatives were.
Exactly. Exactly. And even if it weren't, it has put such a cloud of
Yeah.
distrust between the constituents and the administration.
Yeah.
So there's a cost there, right? There's a cost. There's a lack of trust because you're asking, okay,
Right.
what else has been done,
Yeah.
or what's next?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
That
the change is necessary in order for us to heal as a community. Right. I
yes,
believe that, because I do agree with you, Mark. Um, the current administration has already dug in. And
hmm
if there isn't a change, I think they dig in any further. They don't learn a lesson from this, right? There's not a
yeah,
lesson learned. If there's not any change, in fact, all they've done is learn that, yeah, we can do whatever it is we want to do.
yeah, right. And all they're going to do is make a little bit of noise, and that's going to be it.
Absolutely. So the
Yeah.
residents of Flossmoor, it's no way if we get out to vote that, I think Michelle only won by a couple hundred votes with only 16% of the minority population out there voting. If we
Yeah.
get out to vote, and if people really all the issues are out there.
Yeah.
All the media stuff, everything that's been written, things that have been shared. So I'm not even asking people to, hear my voice and trust in what I say. The same thing I say when I speak to people on the street. I'm like, everything is out there. Let me send you a
Mhm.
link where you can do some research yourself and then ask yourself how you feel about it. And if you
Mhm.
haven't, Margaret, I'm alarmed at the amount of people that has told me they've never voted in a local election.
Yeah, and we have to. Those are the doors that we have to. Those are the doors that we have to knock, and we have to speak to to the issue and help them to understand
Absolutely.
that their involvement is critical to the
Hmm.
future of the community that you live, and not only just to the community there, but to the broader community
Absolutely.
of who we are and how
Absolutely.
we exist in our areas. So, we said that we are going to put our boots on the ground
Hmm.
in those campaigns, which I said to you, I think that it would be important to develop a slate
Yes.
so that what we're doing is we're promoting one slate and we don't have 15 different campaigns going on,
Hmm.
because to do one slate in a small village would be much more organized and easier for us to
Right.
communicate to the residents that this is the slate that
Right.
we want for you to support for school board, for
Yeah.
trustees, for mayor, right?
Yeah.
This is the slate. And to make that kind of change, and it has to happen. We cannot accept anything other than um, victory, in the sense to say the status quo
Yeah.
is no longer can no
Right.
longer be accepted, right?
Agree.
And it's not about being anti-white.
No.
Not about being anti-white. It's about saying that we are going to be inclusive with a new administration that is going to include everybody, including whites, blacks, and whoever else exists, to demonstrate to us that we have a process, we have a government that belongs to the people and it is open to the people to have a voice, and we are going to hear the voice of the people and make the best decisions based on the will of the people and the future of our community.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
it.
the time is started, right? I mean, tomorrow is I believe it's the first day that petitions can start to be circulated, where you can start
Okay.
gathering signatures. November 12th is, I think, the last day, or it's the first day that you can turn in your petitions.
Okay.
And I think the 28th of November is the last day for any changes. So, I, for one, plan on, there's been, thank God, but there's been several individuals that have even reached out to me and was like, hey, Kevin, how do we help you with your campaign? I'll knock on doors for you. I'll host a meet and greet at my home. So, this is the next couple of weeks. That's my time of actually starting to get, that organized. And, I won't, do anything with, mailers, any of that stuff until after the November election. But definitely over the
Right.
next couple of months, I have to get these petitions in and get them signed. And, that's the first step. So I'm optimistic with, those in various little communities, little neighborhoods here in Flossmoor, being able to touch them all. And I was looking forward to retiring and enjoying everything I've worked hard for. But I tell you, as you said, I have to be on the side of right, and there's just so much wrong here at this point in this community that has been so great to me and my two children, that I can't just sit back and complain about it and not try and make a difference. So,
yeah. I think all of us, and by extension, that like I said, I have worked in Flossmoor. I've redeveloped I think 4 homes in Flossmoor between 2000. Let's see, between 2003 and 2010 or something like that. So, so I have some connection there, and plus, I know several people in Flossmoor, and through this process, I came to realize that there are other people who live there that I've known for a long time.
Yeah.
So I feel a connectedness there. Plus the fact there are 63% of the community is black, so I definitely feel a connection there. So I think that it is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate how easy it is for us to make these kinds of political achievements when we organize ourselves together and do it.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful. I think, even, people are excited about Kamala. I think people are excited about, what that means for the possibility of that for our nation and what that stands for. Mm-hmm. And I'm hopeful that even that presidency run energizes individuals that have not, voted locally, to understand it's just as important to make sure that we take care of these things in our own backyard.
Yes.
Just like we take care of for the nation. So I'm hopeful that there are some residual aspects to the excitement of what we're doing in our presidential election that actually will help this election as well.
Yeah, I think that can be a definite. We need to put a plan together to use what's happening on the national scene to impact the local. Because I think that Flossmoor situation and its election becomes bigger than Flossmoor,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a
Mm-hmm.
lesson, that it becomes bigger than and important.
Absolutely.
So so we're actually we are excited about working with you all to make that happen.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Mark, over the last, several, past months, it's been just really a real joy and a pleasure and an honor to meet you, first of all. But, even in this short time, the conversations that we've had and even, the work that you've done and providing a platform, I think it's been phenomenal. And I can't thank you. I can't thank you enough. I look forward to actually using you. I'll say with a smile as I.
Well, listen, I believe that we are all put in place to be used, just not to be misused, right? So
Absolutely.
I consider myself to be no more than a tool, and hopefully to be effective to bring about some good change.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's what service is about, right? That's
Well,
what service is about. And we intend on being of good service to you and to the people of Flossmoor.
much
And
appreciated, Mark.
yeah, so well, listen. So, folks, you need to pay attention. We need you to pay attention because I'm going to be calling for your help to help us to get the new slate elected there in Flossmoor with the new mayor. We're going to have Joni Bradley Scott, and actually, what I want to do is to come back once we have that slate in place, is to bring the entire slate back, and we
Great
have a
idea.
round table. We have a round table with the slate here to present to the community at large. And I believe that we will have people from other places and get people involved and making it exciting, right? Mm-hmm. To make this an exciting run. I really believe that we can do that and really send a good, strong message to the people who say that they've never voted before,
right.
And a message to the people on the other side that don't want to, be inclusive. That inclusive is better for everybody.
Absolutely, we all win.
Right? We all win. We all win. They do not need to be losers. We all can win. All right, Brother Kevin, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate you coming by.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we look forward to working with you. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. Take care. All right, folks. Listen, we are going to continue. Of course, I know that we're waiting for the president to make his speech. I'm going to take your phone calls at 951-221-8221. There's a couple of things happening in the news relative to the election. But let me just go through this. Former U.S. Representative George Santos, you remember him, arrives in court today. And former Republican Representative George Santos pleaded guilty on earlier today to aggravated identity theft and wire fraud charges stemming from fraudulent activity during the 2022 campaign. His guilty plea comes just weeks before the ex-congressman was set to stand trial on nearly 24 federal charges, including allegations of fraud related to COVID-19 unemployment benefits, misusing campaign funds, and lying about his personal finances on House disclosure reports, all of which he had to admit to and allegations or allegation state, I'm sorry, on his allocution statements on Monday. Santos will serve a minimum of 2 years in prison as part of the stipulated agreement and pay restitution of $373,000. His sentencing hearing is set for February 2025. In his statement that he read, he says, "I deeply regret my conduct on Santos said on Monday. I accept full responsibility for my actions." So that took place. And then there was some other news today. for the first time, for the first time in his entire life, in his entire life, one of the most conservative Republican federal judge, retired federal appeals court judge J. Michael Ludick, a prominent conservative legal scholar put on the bench by President George H.W. Bush, is endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris over former President Donald Trump, whose candidacy he described as an existential threat to American democracy. Like I said, it'd be the first time that Ludick, a veteran of 2 Republican administrations, has ever voted for a Democrat in his entire life. He said in a statement, in a 5-page opinion, this is, federal judges, in a 5-page opinion he writes, and you can go on and you can read it online. But he said, in the presidential election of 2024, there is only one political party and one candidate for the presidency that can claim the mantle of defender and protector of America's democracy, the Constitution, and the rule of law. Ludick wrote in a statement obtaining that you can go on, if you go on CNN.com, you can get it. You can see it over at MSNBC. It's on all of those outlets. He says, as a result, I will unhesitatingly vote for the Democratic Party's candidate for the presidency of the United States, Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Now, let me point out the importance of what we're talking about, because I believe that what has been lost in this Trumpism, which is an absolute wound, he is a wound on the American democratic process, and that he has distorted people who are well, I'm going to just say he's distorted. I'm not going to characterize them because it's hard for me to understand. It really is hard for me to understand how a person of character, conscience, courage, and decency supports the likes of Donald Trump. What is more important to me is the country. If this person was a Democrat and it was in reverse, there would be no way that I would be supporting him just because I was a Democrat. There are people who are a part of the Democratic Party, that are people who I consider to be people who have no character and are on their way to prison and should be. There's another Democrat in the Senate that was just convicted of, I think, nearly a dozen federal offenses. Bob Menendez should be on his way to prison. I would not support somebody just because they belong to the party for which I support, because they don't support the values of that party no more than someone like a George Santos supports the values of what was once a Republican Party. The point is that all of us have to really do some soul searching. And this can't just be so that you can dig in, and because you don't want to acknowledge that this person is not good, it doesn't make you a bad person. It simply makes you a person who um, is a person of good judgment or a person of character to say, you know what, I cannot support this. I cannot support this. I'll have to support the person who at least is going to protect the fundamental of our democracy. And then what we will have to do is to be able to sit down and have debate, to have discussion, to come up with compromise so that we can move the country forward, take care of the issues that we need to take care of by securing our border and making sure children are fed and getting people out of poverty. It's not about, let's suppress what one party is doing so that our party can get into power. We need to support policies that are helping the lives of people so that we can get people out of poverty and get people into great educational and economic opportunity and jobs so that we could reduce the negatives that we see, the inequality, the huge levels of inequality that were ushered in by the Reagan years and the Reagan policies, that we see where suicides have increased exponentially. And that's because of the social economic divide. Inequality has driven more people into states of depression, which has driven more people into acts of suicide. Remember, before Ronald Reagan became president, before the Ronald Reagan policies, 60% of America, 63% of America, I should say, was in the middle class. That number, as a result of being gutted and giving all of the tax incentives to wealthy corporations with no accountability, we're down to 40%. Now, as a result of these policies that have been passed over this past 4 years, are changing that trajectory. We have to keep that going. We have to keep that going because what people from the previous Trump administration are saying that they want to do, and there are some tapes, and I was hoping to be able to play those clips tonight, but my producer was not able to get them to me, about someone who had worked in the Trump administration who thought that he was in a meeting with wealthy Republican donors, but he was in a meeting with undercover reporting, taped discussions of him disclosing that Project 2025, Donald Trump is very aware of it, and he is doing his distancing campaign speech about it. But all of the people who are involved, that says that he's very integral in understanding that this is what the objective is should he become president. This we just cannot allow. We cannot allow it to happen. So, the point that I'm trying to get across is that we cannot be so dug into, especially when it is not the right thing to do. And this is not about a personality thing where people are saying ridiculous things about ethnicity and all of that nonsense. And certainly black people should not be paying into that, paying into that which we were and have been discriminated against, about saying, somebody is not 100% black. I don't know anybody who is, but it doesn't make you not black. And we need to just move away from that silliness. But again, this is not about personality. This is about our responsibility to our democracy. That's what this is about. Our responsibility to our democracy. That is what this is about. Not your political persuasion, but your political responsibility. And if you really care about the country, then you care about our democratic process. And you have to reject the ideology that's coming out of the Trump campaign. Or you're basically revealing that that's who you are. Or you're revealing that you're not willing to be informed of the facts. That you're just going to dig in because you're frustrated, you're angry, because something didn't go your way, or you didn't get something. And so you're going to go jump over, and you think that you're going to do better by jumping over into the flames out of the frying pan. There's a preacher on the south side of Chicago by the name of Corey Brooks. The church is right over there on 66th and King Drive. Who demonstrated his lack of understanding of the facts when he went and he did an interview talking about how proud he was to go there and pray at the Republican National Convention. And you want to be a Republican? But every benefit and support, for the most part, that he needs is going to come from people who are in the Democratic Party. Period. And these people who are so-called Republicans, and they're not, they're a part of a cult within this group, because they're not interested in doing anything to solve problems. And I'll say to Corey or anybody else, please provide me, and I'm still waiting, provide me with the policies that Republicans have put forth and has passed that are benefiting the average working person and the average working black person in this country. Just one policy, not two, not three, one in the past 50 years. Bring it to me with the supporting evidence. I want to see it. Bring it to me. I've been asking for it for a long time, years, and nobody's been able to do it, even those persons who claim that they're supporting Republicans. You want to ask about things that, what has Kamala Harris done? I can give you a whole list of it, and I give you lists of it, from the language that she put into the student debt forgiveness program that included Pell Grants that 97% of black students use to go to college. Black students are going to be disproportionately supported and benefit from that as a result of that language that was put into the bill by Vice President Kamala Harris, who, when she was a senator, tried to pass a similar bill, but it was struck down by the federal courts because they said you can't do it based on race. So she found the way to do it that included disproportionately benefiting Black students by putting Pell Grants in, because most Black students who go to college use Pell Grants in order to pay for their college, to get their loans. I can just go through a whole litany of things. But again, it's really more about being responsible and protecting our democracy and understanding how government works and understanding how process is. And that's what this is. It is a process. And when we don't like something, then we get involved in the process so that we can make the necessary changes, whether it be meeting with representatives, whether it be demonstrating and having protests, or whether it be voting and putting somebody else in office who's going to represent the interest of the people. That is the process. But you cannot have that process if we don't have a democracy. If what the other side is proposing that they want to do, if you let the other side and you elect the other side, then when basic fundamentals are being stripped over a period of time, because this is a long game. This is the long game. That's what is going to happen. And we cannot allow for that to happen. We cannot allow for it to happen, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. Understand this. There are 47 seats, federal seats, that the next sitting president will appoint before. And over the next 4 years, the next sitting president is going to appoint 125 to 130 federal judges, which are lifetime appointments. So voting, and elections absolutely have serious consequence. And those people, those radical people who don't care about the democratic process, that is what their motive is to fundamentally change the course and the structure of who this government benefits. And it does not include people who look like me. So we had better do what we must do. Make phone calls, volunteer. If you can contribute $5, $10, $15, so that we can make sure that we have those people down ballot on the House, and to make sure that we flip the House back to the Democratic side and maintain the Senate, so that we can continue the positive progress that is being made. And thusly, by doing that, we can rescue the Republican Party. And the Republican Party could regain control of its party and excommunicate Donald Trump as being in control of the Republican Party and treating it as a cult. Now, there are members of the Republican Party that clearly want for Donald Trump to win. Why? Because they understand government, and they're going to be able to fuel and push their conservative agenda that strips away progress for the average working person, and for them to obey the people who own them, which are their rich, wealthy donors. That's precisely what's happening. All right, listen, that's going to do it for me tonight. We're going to be doing some other programs throughout the rest of the week at the DNC. We may be down on Podcast Row. I'm not real sure about that, but we're certainly looking into it. I'm hoping to be able to have Michael Eric Dyson on the program, who I saw this past Sunday at Trinity United Church of Christ. He was the guest speaker there for both of their services there. So we went there and enjoyed him, and even bought his book called entitled Unequal, an American Story, Unequal. So I started reading that book last night. Very good book. And of course, I had a chance to meet Congressman Gregory Meeks out of New York. So I'm trying to get both those gentlemen to come on to the podcast. And if that happens, I will put out a notice to let you all know, so that you all can share it with your social media outlets and invite your friends, your relatives in to hear that discussion, should that happen. I'm hoping that we can make that happen before week's end. But go out and have a great DNC, volunteer, and let's make sure that we save our democracy by making sure that Vice President Kamala Harris, who will become the nominee, the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States, and let's go out and elect her on November 5th. I want to thank you all for joining in to this week's edition of The People Show. Don't forget to join me tomorrow night for the Tuesday night edition of The People Show's Legal Hour. We got some great topics that we are going to be talking about. I saw this bogus person who was talking about they're a life coach, putting out some information. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about what is a legal amount that your employer can deduct or dock from you, from your pay, for being late for work. We're going to talk about that tomorrow night. And Thursday night, we are doing the DNC Watch Party at 10833 South Halsted. 10833 South Halsted at 6:30. We are doing our 10 by 10 to win meeting, and we are going to broadcast from there. Plenty of room. Invite others to come, and we're going to have our own Southside DNC Democratic nomination of Vice President Kamala Harris watch party Thursday. So join us at 6:30, 10833 South Halsted, and we'll put that information out on the website, on the Facebook page as well. So keep us in mind. So I'll see you tomorrow night at the Tuesday night edition of The People Show on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you all for being here with me on the Monday night edition of The People Show on intellectualradio.com every Monday night from 7 o'clock until 9. And until next week, we'll talk to you then. Have a great week.